what's up, my little Tattle Tells? How are you doing? Listen, I have to bring you more information on the tragic death, no, not death, the tragic murder of Shanquella Robinson. You guys, if you haven't seen my last video, I've been keeping on touch with this. The three people, actually four people, the doctor, the two police officers at the scene, and somebody that works for the Ministry of Cabos, you know, California, I'm sorry, the Big Sur area of Mexico. They are formally under investigation because Mexican officials say they lied. Shanquella's death happened 15 minutes after her spine, the internal decapitation. They, on the other hand, say that they were working on her for 3.5 hours trying to revive her. Two things can't be true. However, new information is also coming out, and I wanted to share that with you about how much of a cover it was. Here's one thing we do know. Whoever decided to go with the alcohol poisoning. Right now, we know it's the Cabo 6, her friends, Winter Donovan, that video of, I'm not even going to call it a fight video anymore. It is a brutal attack, right? Whoever made up that lie of alcohol poisoning, how do we know that it is a lie? Because the autopsy that the parents were blessed enough to be in a financial situation to pay, thanks to that GoFundMe. Make sure you guys donate to the GoFundMe and sign petitions. The lie of alcohol poisoning was diabolical. This was set up. Why is that? I'm going to take you through the mind of pure evil. If you guys don't know, the symptoms of alcohol poisoning are almost identical to spinal cord injuries. What's more, someone is lying. The only thing the Mexican authorities look like they're trying to get to is, were the doctors just incompetent and they saw drunk Black Americans and, oh my God, they didn't care? Because I do honestly think that might have played a role in it. I'm not even joking. Let's be real. Leave all your Pollyanna versions of the world and your rose-colored glasses and let's talk about what's real. Were the doctors just incompetent and just didn't care and said, okay, whatever? And because they were incompetent, they couldn't recognize the difference between alcohol poisoning and spinal cord injuries. And you guys, when I read what it is, it's so similar. Or were they in on it? There are reports that Shanquella's, like her friends call her, friends called her mom and said they needed $5,000 before they could take her to the hospital because, of course, they had to pay up front. That $5,000 could have been easily used to bribe. There also are rumors that, according to the family, the credit card money was missing. Again, bribery is commonplace. When you look at the stats of how many murders are actually either reported, investigated, or solved in Mexico, it leaves questions open. But you guys, let's get into these facts because it's literally, it's literally diabolical. Let me take you through the, or do you guys want me to take you through the story? Which one do you want? You know, just get into this. First, let's talk about why it's diabolical, right? The fact that Winter Donovan, this is what it was in the police report. It's unclear whether it was her, but she's listed as the person that called and the person of record. They are saying that Winter Donovan refused for Shanquella to be sent to a hospital. Now, why is that diabolical? And why do they need to check the phone records of everyone there? Because spinal cord injuries, the only way that you can actually tell if they are, is that you have a spinal cord injury, is through blood tests or in a hospital. Someone cannot tell by eyesight and somebody cannot tell by doing a simple checkup on you, right? This is how deep it is. Let's get into the actual symptoms. Spinal cord injuries can cause one or more of the following signs and symptoms: loss of movement, loss of altered sensation, including the ability to feel heat, cold, and touch, loss of bowel or bladder control. There was a sphincter relaxation. Get this, but that's also a symptom of sometimes a seizure, right? Exaggerated reflex activities or spasms, the medical report, I'm sorry, the doctor's report says that there was actually a spasm, right? Now, here's the thing. The only way to diagnose it is through blood tests. X-ray, the test uses invisible electromagnetic and energy beams to produce images of internal tissues, bones, and organs. We know what an X-ray does. Computed tomography scan, also called a CAT scan, or an MRI. That's the only way you can tell, and the only place you can have these done is in a hospital. I find it odd that they called a medical professional but refused to go to a hospital. But it's not over, right? Let's not forget, Winter Donovan did not want her taken to a hospital. Now, compare that to the symptoms of alcohol poisoning. Remember, as far as vital signs, the two things both spinal cord injuries and alcohol poisoning have for vitals are hypotension and hypothermia, which means low blood pressure and low body temperature. Okay? They have that in common. So you can have low blood pressure and low body temperature, and those are the same symptoms for spinal cord injury and for alcohol poisoning. Here's alcohol poisoning, right? Choking, stopping breathing, severe dehydration, right? Seizures, hypothermia, irregular heartbeat, brain damage, death. Again, the brain damage could be her not being able to actually speak properly, right? There's symptoms of alcohol poisoning that are almost identical to spinal cord injuries. Alcohol lowers the blood pressure in some people in short term, okay? The blood pressure and lowering effect of alcohol is due to release of several substances. We'll get into that later, okay? However, what is it again from spinal cord injury? Loss of movement, altered sensation, what is it? Weakness. I'm sorry, the emergency signs and symptoms are extreme back pain or pressure in your neck, weakness, numbness, loss of bladder, difficulty balancing and walking. Does that sound like when somebody has alcohol poisoning? They are eerily similar. Now, why do I bring this up? Because I want to talk about it. You guys, I went into detail in my last video about how the 4 people, right, including the doctor, the 2 Mexican police officers, a doctor, and one person that actually works for the ministry in that area, which is the local government council, are under investigation for lying and a possible cover-up. Here's the thing. It could go either both ways. Either the friends knew that, called medical professionals, told them the wrong thing. They thought they were like, oh, whatever, just like some drunk, like Americans, whatever. They didn't really care. They thought it was alcohol poisoning. They did all these things to try to revive her, gave her an IV, turned her to her side so she doesn't choke on her vomit. They might have, this is just me speculating, sat her up, tried to be like, Shanquella, like, are you with us? They could have did all these things, and the whole time, because you need to be in a hospital to diagnose spinal cord injuries. The friends were just standing there being quiet, and a doctor, and here's the thing, yes, she's a doctor, but we all know there's different levels of doctor. She is not a triage doctor. Doctors that are not trained in seeing obvious trauma, you're not a triage. So you're just some low-level doctor. You know how to do vitamin infusions. You know how to do this, you know that, but you don't know anything real. You didn't know what you were looking at. And the signs of a spinal cord injury are eerily similar to that of alcohol poisoning, right? By the time she went into the convulsion, the doctor could have been like, okay, this is out of my pay grade. I don't know what's going on. The official report says that even though Winter Donovan refused to have her taken to a hospital, as soon as she had her final convulsion, sphincter relaxation is when you relieve your bowels, then all of a sudden they wanted to call an ambulance. Now hear me out on this, right? She could have been so damaged with her spinal cord that when that doctor showed up, she was still alive, although gravely injured. And spinal cord injuries are super delicate. and them moving her around, doing this, doing that, maybe trying to sit her up, maybe doing the IV, maybe turning her to the side, maybe like holding her head up and trying to look into her eyes, literally was what made the final injury. And if that's true, the Cabo Six are so responsible for what happened, and the doctor was not innocent, but grossly negligent. However, the Mexican authorities have said that they consider them persons of interest, and they think they lied. The questions that come up for her being alive, if she was alive, because let's not forget, the doctor, the two police officers, and that minister that worked with the ministry signed off on it. The Ministry of, not tourism, but there's a ministry, you know, anyway, I'll get the exact thing. They signed off on it. The doctor said it was alcohol poisoned. The police, they're saying, yeah, nothing to see here. And the guy that was in charge of the investigation that worked for the Cabo, let's just call it the Cabo City Council, because that's what it is, the ministry, gave them safe passage and okayed them to return back to America because they saw no signs of foul play. That's one theory that's going. And this is the theory the doctor's sticking with. However, let's be real. And this is what my gut of guts and heart of hearts is telling me. And I could be wrong, but this is something I would like for investigators, the FBI and the medical and the Mexican authorities to look into. The autopsy shows that Quilla had severe bruising to the head. Of course, we know what the internal decapitation, and to the back. It seems like from the reports that Quilla was actually dressed, because if she wasn't, when that doctor and nurse came in, they should have saw the bruising to her back. The severe bruising that was so severe that the Mexican authorities said with the autopsy was like, yeah, like we have to write this down. It's severe bruising. And you know, the darker complexion somebody is, the harder it is to see bruises. So these weren't any light bruisings. For them to see severe bruising, ooh, that little angel went through a lot. We also saw the video where people were squaring up on her, where she could barely walk and was incoherent. She might have already had a spinal injury then. I'm just saying. But when they were squaring up on her, you mean to tell me that there wasn't any damage to her face? According to some members of the family, there was. You mean to tell me that there wasn't any other things? Do you mean to tell me that a doctor who isn't competent went to a villa for 3.5 hours and worked on someone, gave 14 CPRs, gave 6 shots of adrenaline? You mean to tell me that? You want me to believe that? You guys, but there's more, right? Because here's the thing that we need to ask. The search histories for the Cabo Six need to be checked. This was planned. Who, now, again, just like we said, the Cabo Six made it up, right? And the doctors were so incompetent, they didn't know what they looked like. How did they know? How did they know to pick a symptom to pick a disease that the symptoms mimic alcohol poisoning, almost mirror mimic? How did they know to pick an injury that can only be diagnosed in a hospital, but yet refuse her going to a hospital? People just don't know about spinal injuries, and you don't know what mimics that of alcohol poisoning. Somebody would have had to Google it. Somebody would have had to research it. Somebody would have known that if you had put that cause down on a death certificate, as long as an autopsy is not performed, it's anybody's guess. Somebody would have had known, right? The fact that this lets me know, in my heart of hearts, I feel like this was a murder plot. The reason they called the doctor was to get an alibi. They dressed her. Somebody dressed her. The bruising on her back lets you know she was stomped out. This wasn't, everybody keeps talking about it was a fight. It wasn't a fight. It was a brutal attack. A woman that could not even defend herself was stomped out with brutal bruising on her back of her head and her back. She was stomped out. There's more, right? It's not a freak accident, right? They made sure to cover up the bruises with clothing. Maybe it was above the nurse's pay grade. Maybe she was dismissive about drunk American Black people. Oh, who cares, whatever, right? But I will say, in my heart of hearts, the Cabo Six, maybe they did do the research. But when you look into the fact that Mexico has those people, the doctors, the police, and the guy that works for the government of that local area, under investigation, saying you guys lied and saying there's no way that her cause of death could have happened the way you said it was, I'll take the Mexican government's word for it. And when you think about it, everybody's saying, oh my God, she was still alive. I don't believe that. And the Mexican government doesn't believe that either. I believe the doctors wanted us to believe the Mexican doctors wanted us to believe she was still alive. I believe the Mexican doctors that signed off on alcohol poisoning wanted us to believe that. But I don't believe it, and the Mexican government doesn't believe it, and that's why they're looking at her. They don't believe that she was alive. They believe they lied about her time of death, and they lied about her time of death, and that means that they signed off and lied about her cause of death. That's what they're being investigated for. I also want to say that Shanquella death has been ruled a femicide. A lot of people said, "Oh, that's because a trans woman killed." Listen. The Dijonay, from what I've heard and what the local papers are saying, she has a child. She is a biological woman, right? The reason it was detailed, an international lawyer actually came on record and said, the reason it was detailed as a femicide is because anytime a woman dies in Mexico, it is considered that she was killed because she was a woman. They conduct an investigation to see if her cause of death had to do with her being a woman or if it was caused by domestic violence. As soon as they can clear that off the books, that femicide is no longer a femicide because she wasn't killed because she was woman, and it's reclassified as a homicide. But it is standard procedure that anytime a woman dies, they assume that it was a femicide, and then when that's off the table, they change it to a homicide. That's why it's classified as a femicide. You guys, again, I believe that these are questions that need answers. I believe the Mexican authorities are doing the right thing by investigating everybody on their side. Because again, who would be so skilled to know a cause of death that if an autopsy was performed, and thank you for the grace of God, that Shanquella had a family that cared about her. I'm being serious. This is why you ever notice when they talk about like murders and this and that, they target people that don't have strong family ties. People that if something happened to you, there's not going to be a lot of people asking questions about you. Shanquella had a family that loved her more than life itself. And when they heard that something was wrong, even though those monsters, and this is what also makes me think that this was a conspiracy and they planned it, the fact that the monsters flew back and hovered around her mother like demons in her head, trying to make sure that they can move things so nobody asks too many questions, and then went into hiding as soon as the autopsy came out. Baby, that's guilt. But again, first thing, thank the grace of God, Shanquella's family cared about her, knew her, loved her, and said, I don't care what happened. I need questions. And two, she came from a very middle-class family. That Shanquella mama was doing very good for herself. Thank God they had the money for the autopsy. Thank God they had the money to get some answers. But right now, make sure you guys go to the GoFundMe. If you don't want to click on links, you can literally Google Shanquella Robinson's GoFundMe. It's sponsored by the family. Kyrie Irving donated. You'll see it. It's legit. They don't just need it for the funeral. They need it for further investigation. This goes deep. This goes wide. And if what the Mexican government, law enforcement feels like happened, that the doctor, the two police officers, and the guy that works for the local government were in on it and gave a false thing of death, they're going to need all the private investigators, forensics, everything they can. They need the money. Please help. Also, there's a petition you can Google. I'll try to put the links, but YouTube doesn't really like me putting outside links in the description box. I'll try to, but you can Google the petition and also sign that. You guys, we can make a difference. We can speak up, but I'm telling you in my heart of hearts, I'm going with what the Mexican doctors feel. Something's not right. That Cabo 6 and the Mexico 4, yo, 10 demons that all need to be held accountable. All I can say is I hope they're sent to the same prison. Y'all, let me know what you think in the comments. Again, this is ongoing. This is ongoing. There are things leaking out. Let's not forget the police report that showed alcohol poisoning was buried. There's a reporter that had to dig with the Metropolis, which is a local Cabo newspaper that had to, I think his last name is Ruiz, that had to dig through, to actually find this information. You guys, there's more that meets the eye. Again, this was premeditated. That alcohol poisoning was a premeditated thing. The only thing we need to know is, was the Mexican side, the officials involved, were they incompetent? Or were they part of the scheme? You guys, let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure if you can follow me, turn your notifications on. I'm going to be covering this every single day and digging up what I can. And again, don't let anybody tell you that we should just shut up and wait for the investigation to be finished before we say anything. No. Why would you want a case to be closed? The only reason this is even being looked at is because of social media. Keep our foot on their necks. Keep your voices loud. Nobody is spreading rumors. No, but we need to keep demanding that an investigation happens and looking for the answers that are obviously there. Anyway, my little Tattle Tells, I will talk to you later. Bye.